Hi friends. Please subscribe and help me get my first 1,000 subscribers. It's one click for you, but for me it's a huge encouragement and motivation. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. I hope you enjoy this story. Let us go. Will stood by the drafty window of his grandfather's farmhouse, watching the sunset bleed a deep bruised orange over the cornfields. A heavy silence wrapped around the property, broken only by the rhythmic chirping of crickets and the distant lowing of cattle from the neighbor's lot. It had been a long day. The whole clan had driven up to celebrate Pop's 89th birthday. The air inside still hung thick with the smell of slow-cooked brisket, yeast rolls, and stale beer, but despite the warmth of the reunion, Will felt a cold knot tightening in his gut. He usually lived for these get-togethers. They were his anchor, a reminder of simpler times before the grind of city life took over. But this time, the vibe was off. Vanessa, his wife, had bailed after only a few hours. She claimed a work crisis back in the city and said she had to beat the traffic. Will felt it was just an excuse. Her presence had been stiff, almost performative. When she hugged him goodbye, her embrace felt mechanical, like she was checking a box on a to-do list rather than holding her husband. Later that night, Will sat on the edge of the guest bed and pulled up FaceTime. Vanessa's face filled the screen. She was sitting in their living room back home, perfectly put together, a mug of herbal tea in her hands. He forced a smile. Hey. Make it back, okay? Her smile did not reach her eyes. She shifted, avoiding the camera lens for a split second before locking onto him. Will, do you ever get the feeling that something's missing? Her voice was too calm, practiced, like she was reading from a script. Will's smile faltered. The hair on the back of his neck stood up. What are you talking about, Ness? She let out a heavy sigh, smoothing a stray hair. I was reading this article today. Just out of curiosity, obviously. It was about couples who decide to open up their marriage. Ethical non-monogamy. You know, a lot of people are doing it these days, and they say it makes their bond even stronger. Will froze. For a second, he thought the connection had lagged, or maybe the noise of his cousins playing poker downstairs had made him mishear her. But looking at her face on the high-definition screen, he saw no hesitation. Just a weird mix of hope and challenge. Are you serious right now? Will managed to ask, though his voice felt tight, like he swallowed gravel. Vanessa rolled her eyes, not in anger, but with a look of patronizing disappointment. Yes, I am serious. Do not be such a prude, Will. I am not saying we have to change everything overnight. I am just saying, we could consider it. Put it on the table. No. The word shot out of him, sharp as a whip crack. Absolutely not. Do not even go there. Silence stretched across the digital connection. Vanessa looked away, her jaw tightening. The softness vanished from her face. I just wanted to have an adult conversation about it, she said, her voice dropping a few degrees. But, as usual, you just shut everything down. Will stood up, pacing the small room, running a hand through his hair. He looked out at the darkening Wisconsin sky and felt a storm brewing in his chest. This was not just a random hypothetical. You do not bring up open marriage on a FaceTime call during your grandfather's birthday unless the wheels are already turning. Level with me, Vanessa, he said, his voice lower now but heavy. Why are you bringing this up now? Did something happen? She froze. Her eyes snapped back to the screen. For a second, she looked like a stranger. Nothing happened. God, Will. I just thought, maybe it would help us. Relationships take work. I thought, maybe this would bring the spark back. Will clenched his fist, his nails digging into his palm. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. No. That's non-negotiable, Vanessa. I did not sign up for that. She did not argue. She just looked away, clearly done with the conversation. Fine. Good night, Will. The screen went black before he could say another word. Will did not sleep a wink that night. He stared at the shadows dancing on the popcorn ceiling, his mind running on a loop of worst-case scenarios. The next morning brought a crisp breeze and the smell of wet earth, but Will felt nothing but dread. He threw his bag into his Ford truck, muttered an apology to Pops about a work emergency, and hit the road early. The drive back to the city was a blur of highway markers and white-knuckling the steering wheel. Every mile closer to home twisted the knot in his stomach tighter. When Will finally unlocked the front door of their apartment, silence greeted him. Vanessa was at the office. He looked around the living room. It was spotless, too clean, almost sterile. He stood there for a long time, just listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Then, a mix of curiosity and paranoia took over. He walked into the bedroom, straight to her vanity. He opened the drawers, creams, serums, makeup, all perfectly aligned. He checked her closet, the pockets of her coats, her gym bag. Nothing. Everything was exactly where it should be. No burner phones, no receipts for cheap motels. But the clean sweep did not make him feel any better. When Vanessa walked through the door that evening, her face softened for a split second when she saw him. But that look was instantly replaced by a flash of annoyance. "I knew you'd be back early," she said, breezy as ever, tossing her coach bag onto the kitchen island as she walked past him. "You re so predictable, Will." "Predictable?" Will frowned, turning to face her. "Is that what we re-calling it? Because I came home to figure out why my wife suddenly wants to sleep with other people? Is that normal to you, Vanessa?" She sighed, a small condescending smirk playing on her lips. "I just thought we could discuss it without you throwing a tantrum," she said, opening the fridge to grab a sparkling water. Her tone was steady, but her words were ice cold. "Just because I brought it up does not mean I've done anything." Will walked over to the island, leaning in, forcing her to look at him. "Have you?" he asked. His voice was quiet, dangerous. Vanessa stiffened. Her eyes darted to the side, looking for an exit. "No," she managed to say. "I have not." The silence that followed was suffocating. Will shook his head, turned on his heel, and walked into the guest room, shutting the door behind him. He heard Vanessa let out a long, shaky breath in the kitchen. He lay on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead. Vanessa's words echoed in his skull. "I just thought we could discuss it." It felt like the beginning of the end. He turned on his side, punching the pillow, but sleep was miles away. The next week was a blur of awkward silence and fake politeness. Vanessa was walking on eggshells, practically avoiding him. She started leaving for work way earlier than usual and coming home late, always with a vague excuse about project deadlines or client dinners. One evening, Will was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to focus on some spreadsheets, when he heard the front door unlock. Vanessa stumbled in, looking flushed and a little tipsy. She kicked off her heels, threw her coat on a chair, and froze when she saw him. "Hey," she said, her voice slightly slurred as she pulled her phone out of her purse, glued to the screen. "You re-home late," Will said, keeping his voice neutral. "We had a team happy hour," she said without looking up. "You know how it is. Corporate culture and all that." "Sure. I know exactly how it is." The sarcasm dripped from his voice before he could stop it. Vanessa stopped scrolling and looked up, her brow furrowed. "Why are you talking like that? Are you starting with the passive-aggressive stuff again?" Will stood up and walked around the table. "Vanessa, what is going on? I feel like I'm losing you. You distant. You like a stranger in our own house." She took a step back, putting space between them. "God, Will, I am so tired of your insecurity. If you not trust me, then what are we even doing?" Her voice cracked, and she waved her hand dismissively. "Trust." Will let out a dry laugh. "You the one who planted the doubt, Ness. We were fine, and then suddenly you talking about open marriages and staying out all night." "I did not do anything." Her eyes welled up with tears, sudden and intense. "I just wanted to try something new. We adults, Will. We should be open-minded." Will watched her fingers trembling as she clutched her phone like a lifeline. He saw through the tears. He saw the fear, the defensiveness. "You keep talking about trying something new, but you've already made a choice, have not you?" He paused, studying her face. "Be honest." Vanessa blanched. "What are you implying?" "I'm implying that there's someone else, Vanessa. Someone specific." The silence stretched out, heavy and electric. Finally, she whispered, "No, you're wrong. We just talked. Shared ideas. I have not done anything you call cheating." "Talked." Will repeated, feeling the heat rise in his neck. "Who are you talking to about our marriage?" She turned away, wiping a tear. "It does not matter, Will. Just, someone who gets me. Gets you." Will's voice went cold. "And I do not? Your husband does not get you, but some guy at work does?" She hung her head, shoulders shaking. "I did not want it to be like this. I thought if you agreed, if we did this together, it would fix things." Will stared at her, fighting the urge to scream. He sat back down heavily, rubbing his face with his hands. "Vanessa, did you want to fix us, or did you just want permission?" Silence. She turned and walked into the bedroom without a word, slamming the door shut. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant siren of a police car somewhere in the city. Will sat at the kitchen table, staring out at the darkened skyline. His reflection in the window looked foreign, tired eyes, furrowed brow, the face of a man who had not slept properly in days. Vanessa had been in the bedroom for 2 hours now. He knew they had crossed a line, a point of no return, and it was burning him up from the inside out. His phone buzzed on the granite countertop, shattering the silence. Will picked it up. A text from his buddy Dave. "Yo, watching the Bucks game? Giannis is on fire. You good?" Will closed his eyes. He remembered the night sitting around a fire pit back in Wisconsin, talking with friends about marriage, loyalty, the future. It had all seemed so simple then. Black and white. His thoughts were cut short when Vanessa appeared in the hallway. She looked wrecked, hair messy, eyes red and puffy. She was clutching her phone like it was a life raft. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice was shaky, but the icy detachment was gone. Will looked at her, his eyes a mix of pain and exhaustion. "What is left to say, Vanessa? Have not we covered it?" His voice was raspy. She looked down, pulling out a chair and sitting opposite him, refusing to meet his eyes. "I know this went too far," she began, struggling to steady her breathing. "I did not want it to end up like this. But I owe you the truth." "You owe me?" Will scoffed. "Or are you just scared because you know I've already figured it out?" Vanessa bit her lip and squeezed her eyes shut, bracing herself. "I met someone," she whispered. The confession hung in the air like smoke. "It started by accident, at one of the corporate mixers." Will clenched his jaw, the blood pounding in his ears. "Who is he?" The question came out as a growl. She stayed silent for a beat, then looked up, her eyes swimming in tears. "His name is Chris. He works in marketing," she admitted, her face twisting in shame. "I do not know how it happened. I thought it was just harmless flirting, but then what, Vanessa?" Will leaned back, gripping the edge of the table to keep from exploding. "Then it turned into something else. He understood me in a way I felt like you could not anymore. He talked about freedom. About how you can be happy without following all the traditional rules." Her voice trembled, fragile as glass. Will pushed his chair back, his face hardening into stone. "Freedom?" Disbelief dripped from his words. "You call cheating on me freedom? And you thought I'd just sign off on that? That I'd support your new outlook on life, while you step out on me?" Vanessa buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking violently. "I did not want to betray you," she sobbed, her voice muffled. "I just hoped. I hoped if you tried it, if we did this together." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence under his withering gaze. Will stood up, trembling with a rage he was barely keeping in check. He looked down at her, seeing not his wife, but a stranger who had set fire to their life. "You destroyed everything, Vanessa. Do you not get that?" He threw his hands up, grasping for words that could match the devastation he felt. "We were something real. Or at least, I thought we were. And why tell me now? What, was the guilt getting too heavy to carry?" Vanessa choked back a sob and looked up at him through tear-filled eyes. "Please, Will. Give me a chance to fix this. I promise I'll be different. We can start over." Her voice was thin, pleading. Will shook his head, turning his back on her. "No, Vanessa. This is not something you can just fix. You crossed a line you see not uncross. Every time I look at you now, all I see is the lie." She scrambled to her feet and took a step toward him, reaching out. Will, I love you. I made a mistake, but the love is still there. We can try. We can rebuild this if you just give me a chance. He turned back to her, his eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. Love? He let out a dry, humorless laugh that sounded more like a bark of pain. That love died the second you decided your needs were more important than our vows. Vanessa dropped to her knees, clutching his hand before he could pull away. I'll do anything. Anything you want to earn your forgiveness, she begged, her body shaking. Please, Will. It was not serious with Chris. It was just a distraction, a fling. But I love you. You have to understand. He slowly, deliberately peeled her fingers off his hand. He looked at her with a profound ache that seemed to settle deep in his bones. It's too late, Vanessa. We are not those people anymore. Will woke up early, just like always, but this morning the silence in the apartment felt different. Final. By 6 a.m., he was already in the kitchen, watching the steam rise from his black coffee. He stared out the window at the city waking up, realizing how drastically the landscape of his life had shifted. Time felt frozen, yet he knew every second was pushing him toward the inevitable decision he'd already made: divorce. Even if the decision did not bring him peace, it brought clarity. It had been a few days since the confession. They had been living like ghosts, haunting the same hallway but separated by an invisible, impenetrable wall. Vanessa had tried to bridge the gap, stumbling over words, trying to find a magical sentence that would undo the damage. But Will had checked out. He did not want excuses. He did not want to hear that she was confused, or that they could find a new normal. Every time she approached him with that desperate look in her eyes, the canyon between them just grew wider. Her words were just noise now, drowning out whatever feelings he had left. Today, he had finally pulled the trigger. He called a lawyer. Will? You re-up? Vanessa's voice drifted from the hallway. She walked into the kitchen, hesitant, trying to mask the tension radiating off her. She looked like she was walking the plank, terrified that there was no way back. Will did not turn around. He kept his eyes fixed on the sunrise, which looked less like a new beginning and more like a cruel joke. Yeah, I'm here, he said, his voice flat. He refused to show her any weakness. Even now, standing on the edge of the cliff, he had to keep his footing. Vanessa took a few steps toward the island and stopped, studying his profile. Are you giving me the silent treatment again? Her voice trembled. She was grasping at straws, trying to find a familiar dynamic, even if it was an argument. Anything was better than this cold detachment. Will turned slowly to face her. His expression was void of anger, void of pain, just empty. He knew he had passed the point of no return, but a small part of him had still been waiting for her to say something that mattered. She had not. I do not think we have anything left to talk about, Vanessa, he said, the words cutting through the air like a knife. We both know this is done. You chose your path. I see a not walk it with you. Vanessa pressed her hands to her chest as if physically struck. The reality she had been trying to deny finally crashed down on her. Will, I know I made a terrible mistake. I did not mean to hurt you, you know that. I love you, I have always loved you. Desperation clawed at her throat. Love? Will scoffed. It was not a smile, it was a grimace. You loved me, and yet you did all this? You think saying, I love you fixes betrayal? Vanessa tried to speak, to fight for them, but all that came out were silent tears. She was realizing, finally, that her tears were no longer currency here. I know you will not forgive me. I know, the only thing I can do now is leave and give you space. Her voice was barely a whisper as she took a step back. Will said nothing. He stood motionless, like a statue. Did you file? Vanessa asked, the question hanging heavy in the room. Will nodded once. Yeah. I retained counsel. We both know it's the only way out of this. She looked at him, searching his face for a flicker of hesitation. There was none. His eyes were dead. He was ready to be free of this weight. And strangely, the fear of being alone was gone, replaced by the grim determination to start over. I see and not believe you actually want this, she stammered, walking closer and placing a hand on his shoulder. It was a gentle touch, an attempt to transmit hope through contact. Over one mistake? Really? He recoiled, stepping away from her touch as if she burned him. Mistake? You still do not get it, Vanessa. His voice was hard, almost cruel in its honesty. I see a not stay with you. You did not just make a mistake, you torched the foundation. You broke me. And even if you spent the rest of your life trying to fix it, I see a not be with you anymore. Vanessa nodded silently, choking back a sob, and stepped away. You rewrite. Of course, she murmured, her voice hollow. She turned and headed for the front door, grabbing her purse. Before she walked out, she looked back over her shoulder. I'll always love you, Will. And maybe someday you'll understand. I did not do it for myself. I did it because I did not know how else to stay with you. Will did not respond to the twisted logic. He just turned back to the window, feeling the crushing weight on his chest finally begin to lift. She was gone. He was standing alone in his own world now. A world without the lies. A world where he could just be Will again. It was the beginning of the end. But for him, maybe the end was exactly what he needed to find himself again. The next few weeks were a blur of logistics and legalities. Once the decision was made, the process of untangling their lives happened with brutal speed. Vanessa moved out, the papers were signed, and suddenly, they were strangers on paper. Even though the memories still haunted the quiet corners of the apartment, Will was handling it better than he expected. Every morning he woke up, the air felt a little lighter in his lungs. He was walking a new path, and for the first time in a long time, he was looking forward to where it led. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, do not forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.